for joining me on this special presentation on how to explain death and dying to young children. My name is Camilla and I will be explaining the death segment. To begin, young children between the ages of 5 and 8 are still literal, innocent, and usually sweet, so to explain a serious and difficult concept such as dying can be very difficult. In fact, how much a child can understand about death depends largely on their age, life experiences, and personality. Children deal best with death when given accurate, simple, clear, and honest explanations about what has happened. Children cannot grasp abstract ideas, so to be honest with them and encourage questions. Tell them their body has stopped working. Now might be a good time to include or implement religion. For example, they have died and their soul went to heaven with God now. When talking to a child about death, give them an atmosphere of openness and let them know that there is no one right or wrong way to feel. Encourage emotions. Express your own emotions. Do not be afraid to grieve in front of your child, but do not frighten them with excessive grief. Let them know that it's okay to express emotions. Because children are so literal, do not tell them that the person has went away, went to sleep, is resting in peace, or is in eternal sleep. These phrases can confuse the child into thinking the person may come back, or it may scare the child to fall asleep. Two common questions that children have asked about death are, what happens when you die? An appropriate answer would be, someone who dies can't come back to life again. They stop breathing and their body doesn't work anymore. This means they don't eat, sleep, feel hot or cold anymore. Usually people and animals die when they get very, very old. Another question is, when will I die? A good answer would be, we don't know exactly when anyone will die, but most of us live a long, long time. I'm sure you'll live to be very old. Other common questions children ask about death are, where is Uncle Joe? Calmly reiterate that the person has died and cannot come back. This is a good question to answer with a religious input. When will they come back? A child may ask. Remember, they died and they cannot come back. He won't be here anymore, but we'll remember him and think about him all the time. Did he die because he did something wrong? You might want to say, try to make sure your child does not equate death with punishment. You might want to say, no, definitely not. He died in a car crash. That was a terrible accident, but that wasn't his fault, and it wasn't because he did anything bad. The death of a pet. Be sure not to downplay the death of a pet. An article in How to Explain Death to Your Kindergartner stated, this is many children's first brush with death, and it can be a deeply tragic event for them. Try not to say, don't feel bad, Rover is in heaven now. This can make the child think that his sadness is inappropriate. It is a good idea to help your child respond to media coverage of death. The death of a celebrity, or reports and images of death due to war or natural disaster, is a good time to talk about death. Reassure the child that even though you and a lot of other people may be sad about the event, that you will be there to take care of him and will do anything you can to keep him safe. Children need to keep their sense of security, so after death occurs and proper grieving time has occurred, do your best to give your child's life back to normal. Do not abandon schedules, activities that anchor your child's life. Maintain their bedtimes, meal times, and make them go to school to participate in their usual activities. On the subject of miscarriage, if the child has been expecting a little brother or sister and the mother miscarries, the child should be told that the baby probably wouldn't have been healthy enough to live outside the mother's body. When talking about funerals, and you decide to take your child to a funeral, it is a personal decision that depends on the situation of the parent and child. If the parent decides that the child or children are mature enough for a funeral, the parent should explain what to expect. If it is an open casket funeral, explain to the child that the person has died and is not going to be able to talk, hear, or see anything. Mention that people will speak about the person and there may be people who are sad and they may cry. If a child asks why people are crying, tell them that the people are sad that the person has died and that they will miss him or her. Explain the meaning of mourning and what a funeral is. A funeral is to celebrate a person's life, and people have come to celebrate the remembrance of them. It is a good idea to explain death to a child before a death actually occurs. This way, the child can be better prepared and will understand more about what has happened. Remember to encourage questions and emotions. This is a difficult subject and should not be taken lightly. This wraps up our death segment, and now on to our dying segment. Here's Ricardo.
Hello, my name is Ricardo, and I will be covering the dying segment today. As we have heard, death is a difficult subject to cover, and it's hard for children to understand. Patience and explanations are needed for children to better understand the concept of death. But what about the subject of dying? Say for instance a grandparent is in the hospital and is dying of cancer, or a child's parent might be dying as well of a disease, or just happen to have died in a car accident. What would be the best way to explain this to a child? All these things and more will be covered in this dying segment. For example, let's say a child's mother is dying, and let's say it's of skin cancer. You don't want to wait until the right time, because you may end up waiting too late. You want to explain to them, as quick as possible, what's going on, and explain to them about the disease. It is important to communicate openly and honestly with the child, because it can lower the anxiety the child has about what is happening, and it will prepare him for the loss of a family member. Children have wild imaginations, and if they are told what is going on, they might harbor fears or beliefs that are even more distressing than reality. Communicating with them openly allows an opportunity for the child to ask questions, and any misunderstandings out of the way. Children will sometimes avoid asking questions because they do not want to upset their parents, especially if they know that their parents feel uncomfortable or get upset when talking about it. Parents may sometimes think that their child is fine, when in fact the child is emotionally affected. If someone is dying of a disease, be honest with the child about the prognosis and answer the questions in the best way you can, and address their concerns. If you do not know the answer to a child's question, let them know that it's okay to respond with, "I don't know." You should tell the child that it was a good question, and you will do your best to try and find the answer. If the question cannot be answered, take this opportunity to teach a child that not all questions have answers, but it is still good to wonder about it. It is better to tell the specifics and be concrete about the disease rather than saying they are sick or ill, because in the future family members or the child themselves become sick. They might associate having a cold with dying. If the child thinks him or she caused the disease, ask them why do they think that, and further explain that they didn't cause the disease. For example, let's say the child's mother is diagnosed with skin cancer, and he recently learned in school that one can get skin cancer from too much exposure to the sun. He might feel responsible or guilty because he always bugged his parent to be outside with him in the sun for a long period of time, and now he might feel guilty and as well feel that he can also have skin cancer. Also mention the ways to prevent getting the disease. For example, if the disease is skin cancer, encourage the child to wear sunscreen every time they go outside. Always listen to the child. Listening helps discover the child's fears and concerns. Addressing those worries will help relieve the child's anxieties. Encourage questions and let them know that any feelings that they are feeling are okay. Experiencing various emotions at the same time, such as sadness, anger, and happiness, while playing are common and is a way for them to cope. If possible, let the child help with caregiving for the dying person. For example, let them be in charge of refilling the person's water glass. Always use the word dying instead of passing on or not getting better. The best way to help your child to cope is not to protect them, but tell them the truth, encourage questions and emotions, and instill confidence and coping skills that will grow with them.